Hi, this is Amy Magyar from Within Coaching. Today I am here. This is Conversation with Coaches, and
Mm.
specifically the coach that I'm going to have this great conversation with, and coffee as well, because it's early in the morning, is with
True.
our affiliate coach Lu Setnicka. And Lou is out on the West Coast, so she's really doing this early this morning. I appreciate you being a part of this, but this whole chance for us to share and have this conversation and chat and have our folks listen and watch is all because of an article that you sent me recently. Can you tell us a little bit just about that article that you sent, so people, if they want to go and search it out, they can?
Sure. It was in the LA Times. As Amy has already pointed out, I'm an early riser, so I love to get up early, get the paper. We still actually get a physical paper. And this article was titled Bosses Lending a Sympathetic Ear. When I searched for it, this was from the LA Times on July 10th, this past Friday. When I searched for it later, it was titled How the Coronavirus is Making Better Bosses. It's the same article, but two different titles. And it really struck me in the work that we do, Amy, as executive coaches and coaches helping people with leadership, helping people with potentially finding new careers. It seemed like a lot that was written in the article really resonated in our work as coaches. And in particular, I love to work with leaders. I love to work with executives. So I think we've talked about this in the past, moving them from where they are to where they want to be. And it's so applicable right now in these times we're going through.
I think one of the things about moving from them from where they are to where they want to be, first is awareness of where they are. And I think one of the things that COVID, the blessing in disguise, both good or bad, however you want to look at it, is that really strong leaders are strengthening themselves through being able to connect with people virtually. And there's some key things that we can learn from those leaders. And for some of us that I was an emerging leader at one point in my managerial career, and just becoming a manager for the first time, not even being a leader, but becoming a manager for the first time was hard enough.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that would have been like for me. Then immediately going virtual, because I was so always dependent on sort of the physical communication and the physical connection with my staff. And so I think this, the gap between strong leaders and leaders that are more managers than leaders, I think this is a really great opportunity for those that maybe are struggling to connect. And what are they supposed to be doing right now other than sort of answering email? Because I often feel as a leader, when people would ask me what I do for a living, no matter the industry I was in, I was like, I answer email. But yes, that's often, but there's what's in that email, right? And for me, one of my CliftonStrengths is connection. And so, my email was a way to connect. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the responsibilities of leaders, not only today, but as leaders in general, and why they're so important, especially in this world that we're facing. So yeah, I love it. So first of all, if we say responsibilities, immediately I feel like I'm a 5-year-old kid. Then responsibilities are make my bed and, sort of do all these things. And I think as employees, because even leaders are considered employees, we all feel like we have responsibilities, make the company money, or get the widget from point A to point B, or make sure that our staff is productive, and all these sort of things that show up for meetings. But I think what you're going to share with us is it's much deeper core of responsibilities, because if we don't do these next couple of things, it doesn't matter what the rest of our responsibilities are. Does that make sense?
Yes. I would couch it as a new dimension of these responsibilities.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
because I mean, as leaders, a lot of the items that we're going to discuss here, yes, you should be doing that as a leader. But as the article points out, this, as the silver lining, I think they refer to it in the article, of COVID, is for leaders that are embracing these new dimensions, it's making them better leaders. So that's what was fascinating to me. So what attributes of your function as a leader are you really having to enhance and grow and move from here to here, given this crisis? And hopefully, whenever we get on the other side of this crisis, whatever you've learned going through this, you carry that forward because it's made you a better leader. Right. So that's always my goal. So
I love it. I love it. All right, let's talk about that. What is one of those enhancements?
Well, it's interesting that the article is titled "Bosses Lending a Sympathetic Ear." When it came out on the 10th, there is a true need and emphasis on listening. And I mean true deep listening, like seek to understand listening. Yeah. So you want to be there for your team. What are they struggling with? And a lot of the managers that were interviewed for this article talk about how weird it is to open the conversation, not talking about something operational or goals oriented. It's more about checking in and how are you doing and what's going on and what are you struggling with? And all that does is just opens them up as a human being to the other person and creates a deeper connection. Right. And I would suggest that when you're in that listening mode, you be open and you be creative. So I'm hearing, we're talking together, on July 13th. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing about some business feeling compelled to get back to work, get people back in the office. And I just have to ask, if it's a role that doesn't need to be in an office, maybe get creative and keep the person working remotely if it can work out. I mean, I know every role is different. So to be open to different ideas that their staff may have.
Let me chime in for a second, because I know when I was doing a lot of executive coaching, I often would get pushback from some folks who would say, but I don't want to get involved in my people's personal life. And I think what you said so beautifully is how important it is the first couple of minutes that whether you're on the Zoom call, FaceTime, Teams, the phone, whatever it is, that especially on the one-on-ones, you are checking in with that person as a human being. Right. If you yourself as a leader are struggling yourself with, not only being the leader, but also teaching your children from home or navigating them being home during the summertime, and how you also are virtually connecting with your leaders, is know that every single person that works for you is also struggling. And it doesn't have to be a moment where all the rawness has to come out, but just when a human being is acknowledged for, I see you, I hear you, help me check in on what's happening for you right now, is so important. It's and it doesn't show weakness in any way on the leader's point or a desire to get into their personal. You're checking in with these people as human beings, because that's what you've hired.
Right. And many times when the relationship is going well, you'll have the employee check in with their leader about how they're doing. And one of the words that was used in this article is the word vulnerable. Yeah. And for some of these leaders to talk about where they're struggling with the people that they lead creates this element of vulnerability, which for any of you that study Brene Brown, that's a key element. Being vulnerable is really important. So to me, it's useful on both sides of the Zoom call or the phone call or whatever it is. And interestingly, I know about if you've been doing this with your clients, but every session I start now with a client since we went into this crisis in March, always begins with, how are you doing? How's your family?
Yes. What
are you struggling with? Not really germane to what we're going to talk about in the coaching realm, but really more to your point about a human being.
Yes. Yeah. I often will say, I'm going to take my coaching hat off immediately right before we start the session. I just want to check in from human being to human being.
Yeah.
How are you? How is the family?
That's good.
Just check in with me, because what an amazing, I often coach coaches now, helping people through their certification. And it doesn't matter if I'm coaching a coach, I'm coaching an executive, I'm coaching a 20-year-old. Checking in to find out where the person's mindset is before you create any agenda with them helps you understand where they're coming from. Are they a little tired that day? Is something happening for them? Are they chewing? And you don't have to fix whatever is happening for them, but understanding, because if they're shutting you down or they're making funny faces or whatever, that first part of the conversation may help you as the person listening understand where they're coming from, right? It's perspective.
Yeah, that actually leads me to my second and third points about availability, like being available for the people that you lead, and also having sort of frequent check-ins. Now, you have to really gauge how frequent is too frequent, depending on who you're talking to. And but I do feel like if someone's struggling or in crisis or needs support, you as a leader in these tough times must have a greater availability for these people.
Yes.
And then be able to talk about it. You and I are pretty big fans of the CliftonStrengths Finder, which was actually started by a fellow named Marcus Buckingham years ago. And he, I don't know how many years ago, he introduced this concept of what I call the 555, or maybe he called it the 555. But it's a way to kind of check in. The 5 was take 5 minutes to check in on the 5 most important things to get done in the next 5 days. So if you can kind of keep the 555 in mind, it helps with the frequency, or it helps you with the pacing. And again, like I said earlier, some people don't want you to check in frequently. They're fine with once a week, but you as a leader, going back to responsibilities, have the responsibility to know what's appropriate for the people that you lead. What do they need?
One of the things that I had happen is I am working with a coach who is going through her coach certification, but she also has a full-time job as well. And one of the conversations that she had with her boss was, and she didn't, by the way, she didn't wait for the leader to say, let's have a meeting. She actually reached out and said, I'd love to have a check-in. I know you're super busy. This particular company she works for sells cleaning supplies, toilet paper, and things that are right now on fire. So the business is trending really well, but that's creating all new problems.
Sure.
And so instead of waiting to check in to see if her leader needed anything from her, she decided to just do that, almost that quick 555 with the leader, and basically said, hey, I want to check in. I support you in an administrative role. What do you need more of from me? Are we connecting enough? Do you need more emails? And do you need more detail in your emails? Do you need me to text you more instead of email? What do you need from me? And it was such a really great way to sort of, we call it coaching up, in leading up, is saying, what do you need? And I think it can go both ways, where that conversation is, what do you need as an employee? For the leader, what do I need? And vice versa. But having that clear expectations, it can start today. It does not matter that we are, almost 6 months into this. You can always ask that question of your team today.
Right.
Hey, I want to check in.
Good segue to talking about resources, because what you were just saying is, how can I be of help to you, of service to you, be a resource for you?
Yeah.
So the leader, in thinking about the people they lead, also wants to listen for what is this person asking for? What do they need? What kind of resources can I provide?
Yeah.
But as we were talking earlier, the leader can't forget about themselves. What resources do they need? Do they need to network with other people that are in similar roles in their organization, or perhaps they network with leaders in other businesses that are outside their industry but are also struggling? So you kind of create this support group of people in comparable roles who are also leading others, and what works for this person, maybe it's a new idea here, that kind of thing. And then the leader thinking about themselves and what do they need? Do they need an executive coach? Do they need a mentor? Do they need a personal board of directors? So to not lose themselves in this conversation, you know?
Yeah, just because, remembering you as a leader are also going through this as well.
Yes.
More than likely, you're not used to leading virtually.
Yeah.
More than likely, you've never been through a global pandemic before, right? I mean, just some big assumptions here I'm making, but, so there's almost this, and goes back to vulnerability. I think maybe some leaders almost immediately in March started being like, well, I should know how to handle this. And I'll be honest with you, as a leader of an organization myself, I am learning. Even during summertime, we've slowed down how many times we connect, but we're still connecting.
Yeah.
Knowing that there is a traditional slowing down in summer, but that there still needs to be a connection and checking in. And so I think the most important thing, though, of this is remembering that you are also leading yourself.
Right.
And so the kindness and the generosity of your time that you're giving to your employees and checking in with them, make sure that you're checking in with yourself and know that you don't have to do this alone.
Right. Right.
There are other people, whether it's, as you said, the network, there may be some other people who have come up with some really cool ideas on how to connect with their teams. And so, the beauty of LinkedIn used to be, LinkedIn was really a tool for people to remember to stay connected to people that they enjoyed being with. And it now it's sort of become, people are like, well, it's a place to get a job. Okay, whatever. At the end of the day, this is your professional network. Reach out to that professional network and say, hey, do you want to jump on a team happy hour? And these are with, to your point, maybe people that you don't work with now, because it gives you a chance to be a little bit more vulnerable and put together 4 or 5 people and say, let's get together. And if 2 people can make it or 3 people can make it, and, having 20 maybe is too many, but it's still worth your time because it's self-care for you. You may learn something. Yeah.
Totally agree. And then my final thought around this is, which may be the umbrella, which is all under, because we don't know what the future looks like. It's so uncertain. There's a real strong need right now for flexibility. Like, you really have to be flexible with yourself, with your staff, with your company, with the future, because we just don't know what's ahead. So for many people who are in professions that are, tied to fiscal years and tied to revenue growth and tied to different markers along the way, we don't even know if those markers are applicable anymore. So to be kind to yourself and know that these are uncharted waters, I guess. So not to feel like you have to have all the answers all the time. And maybe that is going back to the vulnerability, like to be able to say, I don't know. I really don't know. And we don't know. We don't know what the future looks like. Hopefully there is something on the other side, but who knows? So to be kind to yourself going through this.
I heard this really great term called the next normal. Not the new normal, but the next normal. And I love the next normal because the next normal can be, how do we get through the next month? And what's normal in August may be completely different than what's normal in November, because we may be going through the second wave in November, things that were open shutting back down. What does that do to your revenue? People's children not being able to get back into schools. And, I think for a lot of those folks who were working from home and being a mother and a father or an educator at the same time, it goes back to your flexibility of, what I sort of hope is that the traditional 9 to 5, I call it desk time, is thrown out. And it's, let's be as efficient as we can be in a certain amount of time, and then allow your employees and yourself the time to be the stay-at-home educator or the dog walker, or all these things that you have to be because of this next normal, and being okay with that, because it may not be forever, but if you fight it, what we know is when you try to control what you can't control. I believe the technical term is shitstorm. There's probably a much more better term in executive coaching, but that's sort of my, you know, when we just fight against what we can't control, we waste so much time fighting.
Well, a lot of it, and we talk a lot about this in our coaching practice, is around trust. So I have always felt, depending on the role, I would suggest that managers need to trust their people to best know how to get their work done. Yes. So for example, if someone in these uncertain times, they're not in an office, they know what's expected of them, they can't do it during the day because they're taking care of kids, but they get back on the computer at 5 and work till midnight, who knows how they get it done. But the manager is just clearly articulating expectations and then leaving it up to the person they lead to figure out how to get it done. Requires a lot of communication because of course that manager is going to want to have like sort of benchmarks and things like that. But I think there's a critical need for this trust. And if it's not there, for it to be examined about why.
Lou, I think what's so amazing is what you just shared is in so many ways, human beings, I know what it's like when I've had a leader say, I trust you on this. Mm-hmm. You feel empowered. Mm-hmm. You feel responsible, excited, believed in, all of these amazing things. I think I'd rather have somebody say, I trust you than I love you right now, because so, you know, you hope that, you know, you hope it's both, but it is so powerful. And so then to be given that gift, and, you know, it does take communication because expectations can be different on both sides. So, you know, what does trust look like? What is that, you know, but again, it goes back to communication. So I think what's coming out of all of this is this reminding ourselves that we can't make assumptions.
Right.
We can't assume that people know what we're thinking. We have to share, but we also can't assume we know what they're thinking. We have to listen. And so, you know, so powerful. Oh, Lou, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep still talking about leadership. And this is such an important part of your wheelhouse and the work that you do with clients that come through from within, and also your own executive coaching practice as well. When you think about something that you want those that have been watching, hanging in there and watching this whole thing with us, is there a takeaway that you want to leave them with? A little nugget, just one last little thing. Could be a word, could be a sentence, just something that you think is important for them to just sort of take away from this.
Well, I'm going to quote from a writer named Susan Scott, who wrote a great book called Fierce Conversations. And there's a chapter in there, and this is the nugget I would leave you with. Be there, be nowhere else. So when you're in conversation with your staff, be there, be nowhere else. And that's about being present. And I know it's challenging because you're doing it in a virtual environment, you're doing it on the phone, but for that time that you have with that person, give them your all because they need it.
Oh, being present is huge. Thank you. Thank you for that. What I'm walking away with is, I actually have it on one of my business cards, is, and I don't actually know who said this originally, but what we talked about is sort of, this is what it reminds me of. Your speed doesn't matter. Forward is forward. And so I think even to that point of staying present is, yes, you may have a million other things to do, but right at that moment, just be there. Because I think one of the lessons I learned as a leader, and I tried to when I support executives with, is remembering you can listen for 5 minutes now, or you can spend 5 hours cleaning up something. Which would you rather?
Right.
You know, sort of because you hear it all the time. People say, I don't have time to listen. And I go, you have 5 hours to clean up whatever you didn't explain or whatever got confusing or whatever it is. And so love that idea of, if you're going to be there now, be present, be available, because it just takes care of itself. You don't know the time you're not spending. So
Right.
sort of
Right.
that gray number, but trust me, it's a big number if you don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, thank you, Lou, for getting up with me early this
Enjoyed this.
morning. Yeah. Well, thank you for having a conversation. This is Lu Setnicka, one of our amazing affiliate coaches that works very specifically with executives, also professional development, and is a huge fan of CliftonStrengths, as we are as an organization. But Lou really helps to combine that with values and really helps leaders bridge that gap from where they are currently to where they want to be, or not even realizing where they could be. So I thank you, Lou, for being a part of
Great.
the organization.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
We'll see
Take
you
care.
again.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.